If you're brave enough, hit that like and subscribe, because this story will chill you to the bone. Stay with me till the very end. I promise, by the last word, you'll feel the goosebumps crawling up your skin. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Fate started on an ordinary Tuesday, one of those grey, uneventful days that just bleed into the next. I came home from work, tossed my keys into the bowl by the door, and found a postcard on the floor of my hallway, like it had been slipped under the door. That alone wouldn't have been strange. But the postcard was yellowed like it had aged over decades. The front of it showed a blurry photo of a child standing in a living room. The wallpaper looked eerily familiar, green floral pattern faded. But what stopped me cold was the child in the photo. It was me, maybe 5 years old, wearing pajamas I vaguely recognized. The lighting in the room matched the current layout of my living room. But I didn't remember anyone ever taking that photo. There was no postage, no stamp, no handwriting, just the picture and my name printed in faint typewriter ink on the back. To Daniel. That was it. I stared at it for a while, assuming it was a prank. I took a photo with my phone, planning to send it to my sister and ask if she remembered anything. But when I looked down again, the photo had changed. Same setting. But now, I was standing a little closer to the camera, and my face was off. My eyes were open too wide. My mouth hung slack. It didn't look like a candid photo. It looked posed, deliberately. I blinked, shook my head. Must have imagined it. I went to the kitchen, left the postcard on the counter and didn't touch it the rest of the night. But I dreamed of that photo, of the little boy in the living room. Except, in the dream, I wasn't the boy. I was watching him through the camera, and he didn't want to be there. The next morning, the postcard was gone, but the photo had burned itself into my brain. I couldn't stop thinking about it, especially when, 2 days later, a second postcard arrived. This time, the boy was sitting on the couch. His head tilted just a bit too far to the left, and behind him, there was someone else in the room. A shape, tall, shadowed, watching from the hallway. After the second postcard arrived, I started to feel uneasy, like something was quietly pulling at the edges of my mind. I kept staring at the photo, even though it unsettled me. The boy looked smaller, more vulnerable. The shadowy figure in the hallway sent chills down my spine, but there was no face, no detail, just a dark silhouette. I tried to shake it off, but that night I began to remember things, or at least fragments, glimpses of a childhood I thought I'd forgotten, flickers of a time that didn't match the happy memories I held on to. I remembered a locked door in the basement of our house, a door my parents always told me never to open. I thought it was just a childish fear, but suddenly it became real. I saw myself as a kid, standing in front of that door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. I remembered the sound, the heavy creak as it opened, revealing a dark room filled with old furniture covered in sheets. But most of all, I remembered a smell, something sharp like rust and dust, mixed with something I couldn't identify. The postcards started coming more frequently after that, each one different. Sometimes the boy was alone, sometimes he was with that shadow, sometimes the wallpaper behind him changed, showing cracks or stains that I was sure didn't exist in my house. And every time I looked away and back, the image shifted, like it was alive or cursed. I tried showing the photos to my sister, but she just laughed it off, saying I was overthinking. But deep down, I knew this was more than just some prank or weird coincidence. I stopped sleeping well. The nightmares came back. In them, I was trapped inside my old house, running through dark hallways with no way out. I could hear whispers, but they were never clear. Just voices calling my name, pulling me toward that basement door. And then one night I woke up in a cold sweat. On my bedside table lay the postcard again. But this time the boy in the photo was smiling. Not a happy smile, but something colder, something knowing. The shadow in the background was gone, but in its place was a message barely visible. Remember. The message, remember, haunted me all day. I tried to ignore it, but my mind kept turning over those strange postcards and the flickering memories that felt like fragments of another life. I realized I had to confront this, whatever it was. I started digging through old family albums, boxes in the attic, anything that could explain what was happening. I found some childhood photos, but none looked like the postcards. They were all normal snapshots, happy moments with my parents and sister. Nothing sinister. That's when I found a dusty old journal, my father's handwriting inside. It was full of cryptic notes about time slipping and forgotten doors. But what caught my eye was a passage about a hidden room in the basement. According to the journal, something terrible had happened there years ago, a tragedy that was never spoken of. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. Why had my parents never told me? Why was this hidden from me? The memories started coming back in sharper detail. I saw a version of myself hiding behind the living room curtains, overhearing muffled arguments late at night. I saw my mother crying in the kitchen, a locked box in her hands. And worst of all, I saw my father standing over the basement door, his face twisted in fear. That night, I returned home late. The house felt different. The wallpaper's faded green floral pattern seemed darker, almost decayed. I went down to the basement with the journal and a flashlight. The basement was cold and musty. At the far end was the door, the one I remembered as a child, now cracked and peeling. I forced it open and stepped inside. The room was empty except for a single chair and an old camera on a tripod, covered in dust. I bent down and saw something taped to the camera, an old photograph. My breath caught. It was the same postcard photo. The boy, the living room, me. But then, behind the chair, a faint silhouette appeared in the shadows. The shadow from the postcards, watching. I froze, heart pounding in my chest. The shadow wasn't just a trick of light, it felt like a presence, cold and heavy, as if the room itself was holding its breath. I grabbed the old photograph from the camera and held it tight, the edges crumbling beneath my fingers. Suddenly, a flood of memories crashed down all at once, memories I'd buried deep. I remembered the accident, the fire. How, as a child, I had escaped the flames, but my little brother hadn't. The locked basement door wasn't to keep me out, it was to keep something in, something that had haunted my family ever since. The postcards weren't just photos, they were messages from the past, sent by my younger self, trapped in some broken loop of memory, trying to tell me what really happened. I felt tears welling up. I had repressed all of it for so long, but now the truth was undeniable. The shadows in the photos, the shifting images, the messages, they were a desperate cry for me to remember, to finally face the past. I left the basement and sat on the living room floor, clutching the postcard. The sun was rising, casting pale light through the windows. I knew now I couldn't ignore what was hidden in my childhood. The postcard was a doorway, a bridge between what I thought I knew and the truth that had been waiting in the dark all along. And now, I'm sharing this story because maybe, just maybe, someone out there has received a message from their past too. Because sometimes the things we bury deepest can find a way to reach us, no matter how far we run.